Thank you for choosing to join in with this creative prayer workshop. We ran this event back in July and recorded it on Zoom. So what you're about to join in with is a recorded and edited version of that, which means that some of the pieces will go quite fast and you might need to pause it or just watch it and then go away and do your own piece inspired by it. If you are going to join in today, you're going to need a piece of A4 or A5 paper. I recommend A5. You're going to want a pen and also a ruler. You will also need a small amount of a beautiful colour paint, which you put on at the very end. So I hope that you can find a good place to work, to concentrate. You don't need any artistic skill to join in with this. It's much more about finding different ways of praying and connecting and thinking and being creative. So I really hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
We are going to be going through some really simple pattern making, and we're going to be doing kind of 3 levels of connection. So the first level is going to be we're just going to be connecting with a creativity. We're going to be drawing, but this isn't a drawing lesson, and this doesn't require any artistic skill. So the first part of this is just going to be about using our pen, using our paper, and getting used to feeling it move and just engaging with the making. Then I'm going to lead us into the next bit of connection, which is connecting with ourselves, connecting with our feelings, and connecting with our thoughts. And then finally, our last way of connecting is going to be connecting with God. So if you grab your piece of paper and your pen, and if you have a ruler, that's really helpful. And if you don't worry. And if you have got with you a piece of A4 paper, I recommend you fold it in half to make it slightly smaller. So the first thing we're going to do is create lines going across our paper, and they're going to be at different distances apart. And this is where your ruler is going to come in helpful. So if you have a ruler, you can mark out spaces along the top and the bottom of your page, and as long as you remember the value of the spaces at the top, and then do exactly the same at the bottom. And your space sizes can be completely random, but I recommend that they are no smaller than 0.5 centimetre, so 5 millimetres, and that you don't go bigger than about 2.5. So you should end up with lines across your paper that look like this. Okay, we are going to be filling these spaces with patterns, and I'm going to show you how to fill some of them. So the first pattern that we're going to do is going to end up looking a little bit like wood grain. So if you find quite a fat, sort of a wide space, you're going to draw an arc inwards from one side and then an arc inwards on the other side. They're not going to cross. And so now you've got 2 wide semicircle spaces here, and we're going to fill them with lines that follow the same shape as those first lines. And then once you've done one side, then go on to the other. And once you've filled in those 2 kind of almost like semicircles, you can then start from the top or the bottom, and you're just going to follow those initial lines down. And when you reach the middle, do a U-turn and come back up. And then we do exactly the same coming up from the bottom. Okay, now we've warmed up our hands, we're gonna do another one. We're going to do another pattern. Maybe find a middle-sized gap for this one, and we're going to use our pen completely differently. We've just been doing lovely long lines. We're going to now fill in one gap entirely with dots. Right, now we've been enjoying making patterns, I'm going to explain to you what we're actually doing and why we're doing it. So this is the next way of connecting with what we're doing. We are creating a timeline moving across our page. So each one of these sections is going to represent a time of our lives. Maybe it's a season, maybe it's significant because of somewhere that we lived or certain relationships that we had, people that were around us. Maybe it's about times of our lives where we had a particular emotional experience or spiritual experience. So the idea is that literally as we would move through time, so we pass through these different seasons. And so we're going to do a couple more patterns, and this time, as well as connecting with how it feels to be pulling your pen across the page or to be making different shapes, we're going to allow ourselves to maybe remember a particular time in our life that shape or that pattern or the feeling that we have when we're filling in the spaces, what time comes to mind. We're going to create just a wiggly line, and the objective is to try not to cross over the lines. So find a middle-sized gap. So this one here is probably quite a good size. And we just create wiggles. So it's quite a small, close shape. But it's not angular. So as we're doing this, see if a particular time of your life comes to mind. And just remember it. We can do another one. It's going to be a bit quicker, this one. So this time I want you to find a really narrow space. And we're going to make a very dense and dark line. Now, some of us might feel that this reminds us of quite a dark or difficult time in our lives. But actually, while you're drawing it, you might find it quite a satisfying pattern to be making. And so it doesn't have to necessarily represent something dark or heavy, but it might do. So I'm going to start here with my narrow one that's beside the pattern I just did. And to make it quite dark, we're going to press quite hard. And we're going to go up in a diagonal fashion, trying to keep the lines quite close together. And then we're going to go the opposite angle now, going up. So now we're going to go back over this to create a crisscross. Okay, I'm going to introduce the next connection that we can do through this. So while I've been preparing this, I've been looking at Psalm 136. And verse 1 of that psalm says, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever." And in fact, every single verse of this psalm has the phrase, "His love endures forever." And at the beginning, it's sort of a declaration of how good God is. So we're going to use this as we're creating our timeline now, this sense of God's love enduring forever through this passing of time that we're representing with our patterns. And so I looked up the words love and endure. So the word love in the dictionary is described as an intense feeling of deep affection, a great interest and pleasure in something, and to like or enjoy something very much. And to endure is to suffer something painful or difficult patiently. So in a phrase, it might be used, it seemed impossible that anyone could endure such pain. And it can also mean to remain in existence or to last. So as we're looking at our timeline, I want us to hold this in our mind. And so I think if we just look back at this last one that we did, which I said might remind us of a dark or a difficult time in our lives, that sense of actually that God having a deep interest in us during that time, and that he remained through that time. It puts a different feeling maybe when we're looking at those different patterns on our timeline. So we're going to do a couple more patterns and see whether we can just practice connecting with the creating, just the movement of our pen, connecting with our memories and with ourselves and with our feelings. And now let's also be inviting God to show himself the way that he had pleasure and interest and an intense feeling of affection for us in that time, and that he endured. Let's do a free-flowing one again. We're going to start by finding a wide space again and create 5 or 6 dots going up the page, spaced out. And we're going to use those dots as a centre point for a rush of circles. So a big cluster of circles that are going to come out from those centre points. So we're going to go quite quick. So some of the circles might be a bit wobbly, they might bump into each other. That's fine. It's a different way of moving our pen. And it might feel a bit uncomfortable because we're going so fast. Some people find this quite exhilarating, this quick moving. For some people it's a bit uncomfortable. So maybe that can help remind you of a time where you were having to do lots of things at once, or you were having to do something that actually just felt a bit uncomfortable because you're having to go so fast. Let's do a less intense version of this heavy one here. So you can choose any thickness of space now. And we're going to do a similar way of cross-hatching. So moving up, and then we turn around and go down the other side. So maybe this is a time that was a bit less intense than the other one that we made. Maybe you like the angular pattern, or maybe it reminds you of a conflict, time of conflict. Let yourself remember that, and if you can remember God's love enduring forever during that time. Okay, we're going to do one more. So choose a space which isn't too narrow. So we're going to start off by literally just sort of making a wonky S at the top. As we move down the page, so maybe making one just a bit slowly, bit by bit, changing the curves. Maybe this is a fluid time in your life, or a time where there was a lot of change. We can also remember that in those times of change, God's love endured. So I want us actually to add to one of the patterns, or if you've still got some gaps and you don't want gaps, to fill one of the gaps. And this pattern is literally going to be a series of circles. So edge to edge, and then do your next one so you overlap. Okay, now if this is a new pattern for you, or on a new space, maybe this is a time of life where there were quite a lot of repetitive tasks, or the things sort of neatly fitted together. Okay, I'm going to introduce us to the verse, 1 John 3, verse 1, which says, "See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are. So I did the same as last time, and I picked out those key words again. So this time I've looked up the word great and the word lavish. So great is of ability, quality, or eminence, considerably above average. God's love is considerably above average. And the way he then gives it to us is that he lavishes it upon us. And to lavish is sumptuously rich, elaborate, or luxurious. And to bestow something in generous or extravagant quantities. The point of this verse is that his love is poured out generously. So I don't want any tentativeness or nervousness at this point. We're going to be generous, hence the newspaper or card underneath this. Okay, if your paint is or your nail varnish is quite thin and quite runny, you might find it beneficial to do a very gentle fold. And what I'm going to suggest is that because we're talking about God's above average love, we're not going to go right down the middle with our fold. We're going to go in the top third of our page as a representative of this sense of his love being above average. I'm going to start at the end, and you are going to generously pour your paint. And then we read how this idea of to lavish something is to be elaborate. And so I want us to use our fingers, and we're going to do this whether our whether our paint is thick or thin. And we're going to just gently move the paint so that there's a sense of kind of creating a pattern with our finger and affirming the way that God's love has been luxuriously poured into these different times of our lives, of our pattern making. It's not like a covering over, but it's a pouring into each of those parts of your life. Okay, if your paint is thick, if it's squeezy in a bottle, you're going to do something very similar. So at the top half of your paper, you're going to just squeeze it on. And if it's a bit runnier than that, and in some kind of pot, or you have a spoon, you're just going to pour it on. And again, you're going to use your finger. I like this idea of using our finger. There's so much about our identity in our fingertips, in our fingerprints, and the way that God knows us and loves us. This extravagant and elaborate love for us is within our identity. And at the end of that verse, it says, and you are children of God. This is something within our identity. It's not our action. Our fingerprints are within our identity. We can't create our own fingerprints. We can't create our own acceptance by God. He is the one who does this. So we're going to use our fingers, and you should end up with lovely kind of shapes coming under your fingers. And just enjoy moving the paint around, going up and down a bit into the patterns. Once you've put that first paint colour on, if you want to then introduce a second paint colour, I would then put that on the top, and then again move your finger through it, and it will make, and you just sort of gently mix it. And as you're going across your timeline, maybe a couple of times, again, to be declaring this sense of God's love being lavished upon us through that timeline. There is multiple ways of enjoying some of the symbolism of this. I have purposefully used just a black pen for the different parts of our lives, and then a bright colour or a colour that we love going across, it creates this brilliant contrast. And when we get to heaven and we encounter God face to face, I really believe we will recognise how our lives have been a black and white image in comparison to the vivid colour in which we will encounter God and the richness of his love. And so, however your paint and your nail varnish is looking across your page, I want you to allow yourselves to enter into that idea of the brightness, of the simplicity, and how luxurious God's love is. That is far brighter and far more generous than any aspect of the life that we're living and of how we've represented those different phases of our life and different relationships. One of the reasons we ran this now is because I think we see that a lot of people are heading into a bit of a dip in this time of, it's not quite lockdown, but it's not quite natural. And just keep praying for each other and keep turning to God, and he is with us and his love endures, but he also he pours out his love so generously. So our prayer for all of us here is actually that we are so aware during this time and in the time going forward of God's love enduring now and him pouring out with such generosity into our homes, into our families, into our hearts. You know, when we're grieving, when we're bored, and still his love is being poured out onto us. And may we all be blessed just with the knowledge of his presence, even when we don't feel it. May we just declare over ourselves, God, your love endures forever. So go and share that love.
Amen.
Right, take care, guys.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Bye.
Bye.